everyone, and welcome to the September session of Sensory Friendly Saturday. Today, we are going to be playing with bubbles, and we're also going to be talking about fostering independence. My name is Emma, and I'm a host at the Ontario Science Centre, and I'm going to be handling the bubbles. Our guest, Shelley, is going to be talking about promoting independence. Shelley comes to us from the Geneva Centre for Autism. And Shelley, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the Centre and about our Sensory Friendly Saturday partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see so many of you joining us today. So Sensory Friendly Saturdays is a partnership between the Ontario Science Centre and the Geneva Centre. We've been doing this for a few years now. Prior to COVID, when we were all in centre, we would host these events the first Saturday of each month. And the Science Centre, in conjunction with the Geneva Centre, had a wide variety of sensory-friendly activities throughout the Science Centre, including a live version of the workshop that you'll see today, a sensory-friendly movie, a lot of fun activities led by the host and Geneva Centre staff throughout the Science Centre building. And so really excited that we are able to continue this virtually and still bring you guys this information and some fun activities that we're going to do today.
That sounds awesome. We're going to start today with the fun activity with bubbles. I know we can't be at the Science Centre in person right now, but one of my favorite things to do at the Science Centre is play with the bubbles in Kids Spark. And today, I'm going to teach you guys how to make those bubbles at home. We made the recipe available beforehand, but in case you didn't see it, the way we make the bubbles in Kids Spark is water, soap, and something to thicken the water, something viscous. In Kids Spark, we use glycerin. If you don't have glycerin, you can use something like corn syrup or honey. I used honey for mine. Once you've got that set up, you will have some lovely bubble solution. You can put your bubble solution in something nice and flat and wide, like a plate or a saucer, or something nice and deep, like this container. You guys have probably played with bubbles before, but today I'm hoping to share with you some new things to try. One of them that's great for using those gross motor skills is kitchen utensils, using spatulas. They often have little holes or little slits in them. You can dip them in the bubbles and then wave them around to make a bunch of bubbles. You can also blow on them. Something else fun to try that you can be creative with is using straws. I have some paper straws here. You can use them to blow bubbles in the solution, like your parents always tell you, don't blow bubbles in your milk. But you can also be creative and try new things with the straws. I tried using elastics to stick a bunch of straws together to see what would happen if I used a bunch of straws at once. You can make sounds, and sometimes it'll let you blow big bubbles like a flower. Oop, there we go. Getting my computer all wet. It's a good idea to have a towel handy too, because you don't want to get things too messy. Now, if you do want to get messy, this next trick is a good one for you. We can also play with the bubbles using string. If you get the string all wet, you can use it just like a bubble wand. This is a pretty small piece of string, but you can still use it to make pretty big bubbles. If the string isn't working for you, you can also just use your hands. If your hands are wet with bubble solution, then that means you can touch bubbles and they won't pop. You can also use your hands to form circles to make bubbles. Try playing around to see what you can do. The last trick is my absolute favorite. It is how to make a bubble snake. This one requires a little bit of preparation. You need something like a water bottle top or a funnel and a sock. Make sure the sock is nice and clean. No sticky feet in the bubbles. Oops, my hands are all slippery. Cover the big part of the opening with the sock and use the elastic. Hold the sock in place. If you have little feet, you might not need the elastic. Then, dip the sock in the bubbles and blow through the hole in the funnel or the water bottle. You'll make a bubble snake. Try these fun things at home and let me know how they work out. We will also have an opportunity to ask questions and to talk more about this or talk more about the things that Shelley's going to talk about after the presentation. Over to you, Shelley.
Thanks, Emma. I'm just going to bring up my slides for everyone to see. All right, hopefully everyone can see that. And what I'm going to be talking about today is building independence with your child. And so I don't know if anyone was attending our last session last month. We talked about building routines and getting ready back for school. And now I'm going to be sort of building on that and talking about how to build independence or make space and practice time for your child to become more independent on some of the things that they might be working on. So I think, before I move on, one of the really important things that you'll sort of hear me talk about over the next few slides, I think whatever you're working on, whether that's, building independence and having your child dress themselves, having your child play on their own, or having your child learn how to use a spoon or a fork and feed themselves, what's really important to remember is to provide lots of opportunity for your child to practice. If they don't practice, they can't get better at whatever it is that you're working at. So finding lots of opportunity to practice, to be consistent. And so if your child is practicing playing on their own, to be consistent in providing that opportunity, and then also to reinforce whenever your child does something independently. By reinforce, kind of reward the behavior after it's happened. So let them know that they're doing what they should be doing. And when you do that, they'll be more motivated to try again in the future, allowing us, again, more opportunity for us to reinforce them. And the more they practice, the better they'll get. So before I do get started, I just wanted, for those of you who may not know, I do work at the Geneva Center for Autism, where we primarily work with individuals, both young and old, that have an autism spectrum disorder. So autism spectrum disorder, or you might have seen it labeled as ASD. It's a lifelong neurodevelopmental disorder. It affects how people both communicate and relate to others. The range and severity of that will vary from person to person and will look different from person to person, which is kind of why I have this sort of quote off to the side. Stephen Shore has said, and many people have mimicked him after this, have said, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Not everyone with autism looks the same. They tend to have similar impairments, again, or chain differences in how they communicate or how they relate to others. But how one person looks and how that affects them might be very different from how another person is affected by their diagnosis. If you have any questions about that at the end, I'm happy to take some questions. But on to building independence. One great area to start thinking about, I often have parents, well, where do I start? How do I, get my child to build independence in a certain area? One great way to do this is to think about developmentally where your child is at. And so many of you might have heard either from your doctor or some other professional, or just have seen on the internet, developmental milestones. And milestones are just general markers that children of behaviors and things that children will do as they grow and develop. And so what I always tell parents to remember is don't get too concerned if your child, especially if your child has a diagnosis. I have parents say, oh, my child is 4 years old, but developmentally more like a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old, and that's okay. Don't worry so much about the age of your child. Just think about developmentally where your child is at. And those behaviors where your child is at developmentally are really great ways, really great starting points to practice some independence. So I just have a couple of examples. So for your child, no matter what their actual chronological age is, but they're developmentally around a 1-year-old, 1-year-olds are able to hand over a book, pick up a small item. They're able to sort of, put their hands up as you're putting on or taking off their shirt during dressing. They can respond to simple tasks or simple requests such as pick up a toy or come here, or give me that. And they're starting to use objects correctly. So if they see a brush out in front of them, they might pick it up and put it to their head. They may not know how to brush their hair on their own, but they're getting a sense as to, I pick this up and I put it towards this particular body part. The same thing during meal times, they see their cup, even if this is a sippy cup or some of those toddler cups, they'll reach for it, try and grab it and bring it to their mouth. Not always successful. Some of that liquid might end up down the front of their shirt, and that's okay. But they're getting a sense of how these things work. So if I use this as an example, if your child is at this developmental stage, providing them, again, as I said in the beginning, lots of opportunity to practice. So if you're playing or it's bedtime, and if you read stories to your child at bedtime, you might have a little pile of books. You might ask them, go and give me the book. Hand me the book, or once you're done reading, put the book away. Those are things that they should be able to do. Again, at mealtime, putting a small amount of liquid in a cup and handing them the cup so they can practice bringing the cup, holding it, and also bringing it to their mouth to drink the liquid. Again, as you're getting ready, if you're in the bath, having a brush or any other item that you might be using, and they might try and brush their hair, and they might go the opposite way and make their hair all spiky. And again, that's okay, but they're getting that practice time in there to do those things. So these are sort of fun ways appropriate for your child's developmental stage for them to practice doing things on their own. Here's another example of a 4-year-old. I use this example because I think at this age, if your child is developmentally at this stage, they really love new things. So it's a great way to introduce not only new toys, new items, new activities, new routines. The newness of it all is quite motivating for children at this age. So because it's new and because they're motivated, they're more likely to try and do things on their own. So this stage, I should say, is a really good time to start practicing having them do different things on their own. So over the next couple of slides, what I'm going to do is sort of go through a few areas from eating, communication and language, play skills, and just some quick tips and tricks that you can try at home with your child to promote some independence. Again, as I said earlier, I think what's really key for me is that we provide that opportunity at home, to be consistent in how we provide that opportunity, and to let them know that they're doing a great job. So giving them that reinforcement. So if we think about eating, let them get messy. I always say, parents, it's okay. Again, practice makes better. We're not looking for practice makes perfect. We're just looking for practice makes better. They are going to be messy. They're going to try and grab things with their hand, even if they're not typically foods that we would eat with our hand. They might try with a spoon or a fork to get the food. They might get the food on the utensil, but it doesn't quite make it all the way to their mouth. And again, that's okay. It spills down their front. But give them opportunity. I think, what's really stands out for me here around eating, and I'm a parent myself, is us as the caregivers, as the adults supporting our children, that we have to sort of give them that opportunity and be okay with things getting messy. Food will fall on the floor, their clothing will get messy, their high chair at the table, wherever you guys are eating, will get messy. And that's okay because they're practicing becoming more independent at feeding themselves and getting used to how they use utensils, hold a cup and getting that liquid in their mouth. So we as the adults too have to be okay with them getting messy. But let them get messy. Start small, so giving them small amount of liquids. If you're working on having them drink from a cup independently, get smaller amounts of liquid, less spilling, but also more successful for them in getting it into their mouth. Also encourage them to be part of routines. I think, sometimes when we think about eating, we really focus on the food part and them getting the food into their mouth, which of course is important. But also meal times comes with all sorts of routines, whether you're having a bigger meal like dinner or a smaller meal like a snack time, taking items from the cupboard or the fridge, putting them on the table. Even if you use placemats or you set your table before you start your meal, having them bring, especially if it's plastic bowls, things are quite appropriate for their age and safety, having them take it from wherever it comes from to the table. Getting them involved in those mealtime routines really does help build independence for your child around this eating time. Now looking at self-care, so a lot of, I'll use the example of getting dressed, brushing your teeth. You can even include toilet training, those sort of things in this area. Again, I think what's really important is to be consistent in what you expect from your child. So I'm going to use the example of getting dressed in the morning. Say your child is able to grab their sock and get it on their feet. But they can't do anything else. That's the only thing they can do. They're able to grab that sock and then pull it over their foot. And maybe they even only get it over their toes. They can't get it quite around their heel. But let them do that each time. So be consistent within that sort of dressing routine. And so again, you might have to do everything else for them, but it's time to get dressed and you know that they're able to get their sock and get it on. And then you're going to give them some reinforcement for that and you might do the rest. And over time, they'll soon learn to get the sock over their toe and their heel. And then they'll learn how to not just do their socks, but they get their undies on and then their pants and their shirt. And over time, will build upon their independence and soon they're dressing themselves all by themselves. So I think it's really important to be consistent within the routine and consistent with the things of that routine that they're able to do by themselves. So having that clear expectation. And then whoever else is in the home supporting you or even out of the home, if it's at daycare or at some other childcare center, to let everybody know, like Billy can put his socks on by himself. So if he's at the childcare center and, they're coming outside from outdoor play, water play, and they're changing their clothes to remind his teachers that he can put his socks on by himself. So if there's opportunity for him to do that, for him to practice that, just not at home, but also at the childcare center. Moving on, looking at language and communication. This is also a big one. I get a lot of questions from families around how to promote more language and communication independence in their child. So a few tips and tricks: label what your child is doing. So throughout the day as they're playing or engaged in routines, or you guys are out and about in the community at the park, just to label what your child is doing, even if it's single words: you're running, jumping, you're reading, whatever it might be. So they start attaching those labels to the things that they're doing. Will promote some independence around them, then using the same language and using the same words to try and communicate. If they use words to communicate, not all children do. Not only label what your child is doing, but commenting about what you and your child is doing. Offering choices is a really great one to foster independence. So not always saying this is what you have to do, but offering, again, going back to my putting on socks example, do you want the black socks or the yellow socks? It's snack time. Do you want apples or grapes? And letting them choose what they want. We can offer choices by using pictures. We can offer choices by having the actual items and you have both of them out and they just reach for the one that they want. But offering choices, again, is a really great way to start building independence in your child. Another really good one that I mentioned, especially around language and communication, is to let your child answer if questions are being asked of them. I find as parents, and I remember doing this when my kids were really little, and someone might ask them something and you kind of jump in and answer for them. But let them, try and answer themselves, even if they only use single words, even if, by way of answering, they're pointing to someone or using their facial expressions to answer. Let them answer first, and then you can build upon their answer rather than answering for them. So those are some strategies there. And then leisure activities, play activities. So this is having your child start to play on their own, which I know is really important for families. And I hear this a lot over the last few months with COVID. Families or parents are working from home and they need their child to, play on their own, even if it's for a small amount of time. It might be 5 minutes while you grab a phone call, or it could be longer if you're on a meeting. But one way to start building that is to use things that your child already knows how to do and is really excited about. So you see in this picture, this little guy is playing with dinosaurs, I think. So, if your child likes to play with dinosaurs, setting them up, they might be even in close proximity to you or in an area that they can still see you, and setting them up with some of their favorite things. And initially, this really could be 30 seconds that they're playing on their own. You might help them get them set up with their toys and even sort of pretend to sort of walk away, be like, I'll be right back. I'm going to get something, and then come back 30 seconds later. And they've played on their own for 30 seconds. And then over time, you build up upon this time. And sometimes you have to become creative at home and maybe use the other adults or siblings in the house to sort of have them interrupt. If you're playing with your child, have a sibling come along and say, like, Mom, I need your help with something. And so you go off with the other sibling, you stay playing, keep playing with the dinosaurs, I'm going to be right back. And you go off with the sibling to do something for maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then come back. They've played on their own for that time and they're getting used to learning that I can do things by myself. It's okay. The adults or the caregiver, mommy, daddy, grandma, whoever it might be, is going to come back, but I can do this by myself. So that's a really, really great way to start building up independence in your child for them playing on their own. It's not the best time to introduce new toys that they might not be able to know how to do or how to play with, but I would use existing items that they're really excited about, really motivated about, and toys that they know how to manipulate and use. But what you're really working on is the amount of time that they're using that toy on their own. Next couple of slides, I do have some pictures of some supports that we can use to build independence. So visual supports are great. Kids, teens, adults with autism love visual supports. It works really well to support their learning. So here you see I've got a choice board. I talked about choices earlier. This one has 9 squares on it. You don't have to have so many choices if that's overwhelming or too much for your child. You can offer just 2 or 3 or 4. Again, whatever is appropriate for your child or the activity that you're engaging in. You could offer those choice boards. If you're not in the room and child is playing on their own in the living room with a variety of toys, you could have the pictures of the toys out. You've got dinosaurs, coloring, Lego. Those choices let the child know, oh, these are the toys that they can play with. Right now, I'm going to play with dinosaurs. If they're done with dinosaurs, they can look back up at that choice board and go, oh, yeah, I also have coloring, and go get their coloring and play with that. So you can see how you can build some independence around their play if a choice board is out, whether that choice board is presented by another person or it's just up on the wall for them to look at. We've got first, next, then boards. So first play, then playtime with mommy. So again, building playtime on their own. Building up some reinforcement that they know if they play on their own for a little bit, then mommy's going to come in and she's going to watch the iPad with me, or we're going to go to the park, or whatever that fun thing. I'm going to have my snack of gummy bears or something like that. Something fun that follows the activity that you're working on. Here's another couple of examples of some visuals. Books are great, again, for teaching independence. A lot of us read to our kids all the time, sometimes being mindful, purposeful, intentful in choosing the type of books that we read to our kiddos. So books about, this one, I'm sure if we open it up, is all about getting dressed, how to get your socks on, how to put your pants on, take your shirt off, but it's embedded in a nice, fun little story. So it's just story time, but another visual for your child to see and learn how to do things for themselves. On the other side here, we've got a visual schedule. This one is of the entire day. It kind of looks like I wake up, brush my teeth, have breakfast, playtime, snack time, going to the park, etc. Again, to build independence of the routine of the day. As I mentioned earlier, you as the adult supporting your child might be walking your child through these routines, or this could be a visual that's up on their wall and they know what to expect, what's coming next, and they can start preparing themselves on their own for the next activity. They might, you have just finished snack, the next picture is park. For that picture might trigger, oh, I've got to go get my coat or my shoes. And they start trying to go and do that on their own. So building independence, following the routine. And then my last sort of slide I have for you here, I wanted to sort of, again, reinforce what I've been saying around building independence. It really doesn't matter what you're working on, from communication to play, dressing, eating. What's really important is to know what your child can do in that moment. So start small, small expectations. If they only just grab the spoon and that's all they can do, they can't get the food on the spoon, they can't bring it to their mouth, that's okay. But be consistent in that expectation that during meal times, they're going to try and grab for their spoon. So you have small expectations, you're consistent with that, you provide that reinforcement, you're letting them know how well they're doing. And once they become good at that small bit, they're just grabbing the spoon, we're now going to build on that expectation. So now it's like, grab the spoon, let's see if you can try and get some food on it. You might have to help them here. But now that's that expectation. It's not just grabbing the spoon, it's grabbing the spoon and trying to get a piece of food on it. So now our new expectation, which is built on the smaller one, we're consistent with that. We're letting them know what a good job they're doing with that. So providing that reinforcement. Once we've done that quite a few times and they're good at grabbing the spoon and getting food on the spoon, now our next expectation is trying to get that spoon with food in it to their mouth so that they can eat it on their own. And that becomes our new expectation. And again, we're consistent with that. We're reinforcing that. We're letting them know what a good job they're doing. And over time, you'll see it as you chain those smaller pieces of expectations, they're starting to learn to do these things on their own and they're building independence. So just a few things to keep in mind. As I said, I'm happy to take questions at the end. And also if anyone just has general questions about the Geneva Center for Autism, our buildings are currently closed due to COVID-19, but we are open and running virtually. I've put here our website. If anyone wants to take a look, we've got also a resource page on that website full of free visuals, kind of as I showed you earlier, if anyone's looking for some visuals. And if anyone wants to speak with a social worker or interested, if you live in the Toronto area, to go through the intake process, this is a phone number and extension that you can call. So thank you so much.